let's jump in here. We're going to do this. All right. Oh, yeah, this is brought to you by me, by Vorus. That's my company, Vorus. I started Vorus about 5 years ago. We're a team, more than just me. We're a team of go-to-market experts. We work with our clients to help them build out their sales organizations, whether they're hiring reps for the first time or they have some sales reps, just performance isn't going as well as they think it should go or hope that it goes. We come in as a team with decades and decades of experience building out sales orgs and help you do that. We work with clients that are really small. So some of the customers that we work with are bootstrapped, smaller organizations. We've worked with venture-backed companies and also really large organizations. So we have ways to work with everybody and really help you build out a strong, repeatable sales process. Here's the promise for this class here. By the end of this class, you'll learn a bulletproof process for hiring top performing sales reps with real questions you can ask to uncover if someone is actually a good candidate. It goes back to what I said before. Salespeople are very good at selling themselves. And there's a quote that I like. I don't know who said this, but it's not a Kyle original. It's hiring is guessing, firing is knowing. Always that is true. There's a sense of guessing, but I can tell you, if you follow some of the things that I show you today, you're going to dramatically reduce the amount of mishires that you make, which has a big impact on your sales organization, especially if you're in the earlier stage. All right, who am I? Who is this guy? Well, I am Kyle. My name's Kyle. I've worked with over 80 software and service companies, helping them build a repeatable sales process. If you followed me for any period of time, you'll know that most of the content that I create is how do we build a data-driven sales process from the beginning and let the data drive our decision making. There's lots of ways that we do that, and that's probably the more unique lens that I bring to the sales world. I've written 3 Amazon best-selling books. One's on cold outreach called Cold to Committed. The other's on leading sales teams called the Sales Development Framework. And then the most recent one is on building a repeatable sales process. That's more of a workbook style format that I think is very good and really actionable. I've helped our clients sell over 100 million in software and services, probably well over that now. 280 million in money raised. Those are across our clients that are venture backed, which is about 30% of our clients. The rest are bootstrapped. And I've trained over 1,000 salespeople. So I've been around the block. I've had almost every role you would have in the sales organization. I've been in board meetings when the sales team is crushing it, and I've been in board meetings when they definitely aren't crushing it. So I've had the perspective of things going well and things going poorly. I've sold through very difficult times. I've also sold through incredibly abundant times. So I have a great lens, a lot of different perspectives that I bring here, and that's why I love doing these classes, because I get to answer questions from people like you. Here's the main problem. If you hire the wrong people for your sales team, you'll waste time, money, and kill culture. I don't think I have a slide on this, but I want to elaborate on this a little bit here. And if I have a slide on it later, I'll skip it. There are 3 poisons for a sales team. Actually, real quick, while I go through the 3 poisons, can you type in, are you hiring salespeople and don't have any today? Do you have a small sales team? Like, actually just type in how many salespeople that you have. And if you don't have a sales team yet, but you're hiring for one, comment that as well. Just let me get a sense of how large the sales organizations are for the people that are here. And please participate. This is super helpful for me so I can tailor some of the stuff that I'm giving you. Okay, so 3 poisons for sales teams. The first is that the individual reps on the team don't know what they have to do to be successful. And what I mean by that is they don't know, like, hey, on a daily basis, what do I have to do in order to hit my number as a sales rep? That's the first poison. The second poison is the leadership team doesn't know how to use the data to enable their team to be successful. What I try to do is I try to build a sales process that's so good that I can hire the average salesperson. They can follow the process and then hit their number. And then I do whatever I can not to hire average salespeople. We need, as a leadership team, as an executive team, to be able to understand the data and let that drive our decision-making. So that way we can create a process that people can follow and we know that they'll hit their number when they follow it. So that's the second poison. The leadership team doesn't know how to use the data to make their team successful. And then the third one is there's a culture where poor performance is tolerated. When you're in an environment where you've hired these sales reps and you don't know like why they're struggling, you're like, gosh, this isn't going all that well. you're not sure if it's them or if it's your process, is your product. It's very difficult to point to the salespeople and say, hey, you're the problem, right? So it creates this culture where the salespeople just don't have to perform. And you're not in a position to where you can confidently say it's a salesperson problem, so you don't fire them. And it creates this culture where poor performance is tolerated. And every time you hire a new rep, they get indoctrinated into that culture. Is a very difficult thing to peel yourself out of. All right, let's take a look at this here. Okay, one salesperson here. I have a sales team, 7 and hiring 3 more. Okay, great. Don't cry. Okay, loophole you found. You didn't answer my question, but you just told me not to cry. 2 salespeople looking to hire a few more. Well, there's a lot more than just a handful of people have answered. So tiers are incoming. I'll give you a second chance a little later. But okay, so this is great. 2 salespeople, 7. So on the smaller side, so earlier on, hiring 3 more, you're getting to more of a medium-sized sales team. So that's good to know. Okay. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Let's talk about the 3 components of hiring top performers, and then we're going to go through each one of these components here. And again, I have some stuff that I'm going to give you. The first component of hiring a top performer is what I call the ideal candidate profiler, building out an ideal candidate profile. Now, before you roll your eyes, you're like, yeah, of course we need to understand who our ideal candidate is. What I'm saying, and I'm going to show you how to do, is getting so clear about who the right salesperson is. And everybody who's evaluating salespeople is aligned on that being the right person. And then you don't deviate from it. You'll have things that are more important to you than others, but ultimately you have this vision for the right sales rep and you do not deviate from that vision. Right now, we're in a position where there's a lot more sales reps looking for work than there has been historically. We went through this phase where like you couldn't hire salespeople. It's so challenging to find good salespeople. Now there's a lot more that are looking for jobs. His times are a little bit more difficult. You want to have a clear vision of who the right sales rep is. So that way, when you're evaluating all of the candidates you have for your role, you're like, hey, do they match my ideal vision or are they just getting me excited because I like their personality? So that's the first component. The second component is having a really structured interview process. What I find is that a lot of organizations, they have a bit of a sloppy interview process where they do things a little differently, or it's kind of half-assed. We're not asking similar questions. We're not following an evaluation framework. We don't have a lot of structure to our interview process. And what happens when you do that is you have reps that have a different interviewing experience than other reps. You're not evaluating them evenly, and you end up not making the best decision, or you're rolling the dice ultimately and hoping that you make the right decision. So having a structured interview process is really important. And then the third one here are the interview questions that you ask. You should have some interview questions that you like to ask, and ask them every time. So you can start to see how people respond. Spoiler alert, big spoiler actually. So if you don't want a spoiler, plug your ears. If you want this all to be a surprise, like a Scorsese film. Spoiler alert, I will be giving you my favorite interview question that I invented. This is my contribution to the sales community, and it's my favorite interview question. You're going to love it. All righty, let's jump in first to the ideal candidate profiler. This I have as a PDF. You can screenshot if you want. If you don't want to, be all fancy with the PDF, please somebody make it your responsibility to remind me to give this to you, but I'll probably remember. But just in case I don't, this is called the ideal sales candidate profiler. So what we're looking at here is a breakdown of the skills and attributes we're looking for in a sales rep. Of course, you can go and put in, more descriptions that you want, but at a bare minimum, I want you with outlining the skills and the attributes that you're looking for, because these are very quantifiable, right? Things like, let's go through skills first. Can I zoom this in a little bit? Can y'all see that, or is that too small? Comment if that's too small, but if you can see it, then we're in good shape. It's a little small for me, but I'm on a small screen here. Okay, the first side of this, the left side, are the skills. So you can see sales motion is the first one. It's really important. It is a bit small, huh? Okay, let's see if I can figure this out. Oh, you know what? Maybe I could disappear me. Oh, is that better? Okay. Oh, geez. Everyone's like, I hate it. This is the smallest of all time. Give me a second. I'm going to open this up. Look at this. I care about the experience, and I'm going to do this. Okay, it worked. It'd be hilarious if it just everything broke. Okay, cool. So this is not going to be small because I'm going to hit this little plus button and look at us. Wow, so big. You're going to be like, Kyle, my retina. Okay, so I want to talk about the skills first. So we're going to go on the left-hand side here. We have the sales motion. I'm going to tell you something about sales motion. If you're hiring sales reps and you sell an enterprise product, you want to hire sales reps who have experience selling enterprise products. If you sell into the mid-market, you want reps who've sold into the mid-market before. SMB, you want reps who've sold SMB. The reason why is because it is challenging for a sales rep who's used to a specific sales motion like enterprise, mid-market, or SMB to then sell in a different motion. Try taking an enterprise sales rep and having them sell SMB with one call closes. They're used to navigating these super complex sales cycles with lots of criteria and evaluations. That's not what happens at SMB. It's much more transactional. Vice versa. The SMB sales rep going up to enterprise or even up to mid-market, that can be challenging too. They're not used to dealing with champions and other stakeholders involved in the decision. They're used to selling just to the one person, right? You want to make sure that you have the sales motion figured out. Product type. This is another great one where it's like, hey, have they sold a similar product? And this can be really helpful if you sell in a very competitive space. Because if they have experience selling a similar product, it's going to shortcut a lot of the onboarding and the ramping of that rep because they know how to sell a product like this. And then we have personas sold to. I really like hiring sales reps who have sold to a similar persona. So if they haven't sold a similar product, but they've sold to CMOs or CEOs or engineering directors, whatever type of person you end up selling to, if you find someone who sold to that person, you end up shortcutting a lot of things because they speak the language of the buyer. And that's one of the biggest criteria I look for in a rep. Can you speak the language of the buyer? Then we have verticals sold into. So have they sold into manufacturing? Have they sold into supply chain? Have they sold into architecture firms? Have they sold to chiropractic offices, right? Like who do you sell to? What industry do you sell into? And have they sold into that industry? That's often helpful. Prospecting. So if you have an AE and you're expecting them to do their prospecting, do they do outbound? Do they have an experience doing outbound or do they only work inbound leads? This is critical for SDRs and AEs. Side note, actually, most of this is on the skills side is built out towards AEs. SDRs, the attributes matter more to me, but I'll still build out some of the skill stuff. But I generally hire SDRs right out of college. And I like college athletic backgrounds. If you're hiring, type in that you're hiring SDRs. If you're hiring SDRs, just type in hiring SDRs, and I can elaborate a bit more on that. But most of this is for AEs. So do they have experience working inbound leads versus outbound leads? Those are very different sales, right? Like if you are dealing with outbound, you went out to those people. It's completely different than somebody who has a lot of intent and opted in and then signed up for a demo or whatever. So you want to make sure they have some experience closing those types of deals. Sales tools, this is more of an optional one where it's like, hey, what tools are you familiar with? Have you used HubSpot before? I usually will only make this a requirement if it's like a really unique tool. I don't think I've ever made it a requirement, but if there's something like really specific to you, you can put it here, and then if there's some other things that you want. So that's for the skills section. Excuse me. Now let's move on to the attributes. Let me actually double check here. Hiring SDR. Oh, okay, a handful of you hiring SDRs. Okay, so let me go into that a little bit here too. Actually, let's go to the attributes and then I'll go to the SDR stuff. I do cover the SDR stuff a little later too. So for attributes, I look at motivation. Are they more career motivated, meaning they want to move up in their career, or are they more money motivated? That's a really important thing for you to know about the sales rep that you're hiring. You might think like, oh, I just want a sales rep that's super money motivated. Well, if you're an earlier stage startup company, and you're not fully confident that your sales process is at a place where that person's going to be able to hit the ground running and hit their number, you might not want somebody who's just there for a paycheck and wants to make as much money as possible. It might actually be difficult for them. They might have some bad months, some good months, right? So that might be the wrong type of person. So I'll tell you a real example with me. I hired someone a while ago who was very, very money motivated. And I made the mistake of not fully vetting. This is for Voris, my current company, fully vetting his skill set. And what happened is while he was working with our clients, I realized, oh, he doesn't really have the experience. This is like 4 years ago, I think. He doesn't have the experience to really guide our clients through building out the sales process. He's a little too junior for that. And my goal was to coach him up in order to be able to do that. And as I was doing the coaching up part, he wasn't making the money that he wanted to make. So our conversations were all about money. And then it started drifting his responsibilities because I was trying to align him more to the money because that's how he's motivated. This was such a big error. And I ended up with somebody who wasn't good at doing what I hired them to do, wasn't learning what I was trying to teach them at a rate they needed to because they were so focused on money. And I had created almost a whole nother role for them. This is a classic mistake, a whole nother role for them that didn't fully align with what I needed in the first place. And I had to let them go. And what did I do after that? I hired somebody with 30 years of experience. His name's Fed. He still works for me today for over 4 years. I hired him. He's been building out sales orders for 30 years. That's the right person. He didn't need the training. He was just like, yeah, I'll talk to clients right now. This is all I've done for my whole life. So that's, an example of why it could be important for you to think through that. Adaptability here. Do they want more of a stable environment where you have a structured process and they're going to follow that process, or are they very adaptable? If you're an earlier stage startup company, you're building out your sales org for your first time, you want somebody more adaptable who can change, experiment with different processes, change things up a little bit. Let me see. I forget who it was here. Was it Robbie? I think, yeah, Robbie. So Robbie, you have a sales team of 7 people. You probably have a pretty decent handle of what your sales process is. Maybe it's still a bit early and you're figuring things out, I'm sure, right? We no matter how big you are, there's still an element of trying to refine things, but you might look for somebody who's a little bit more on the stable side and less on the adaptable, because these people, they tend to get bored doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, right? So just things to put on your radar here. And then we have experience level. Do you want someone more senior, more junior? You understand that. For SDRs, I'm always hiring. I almost always hire junior. Doesn't mean I don't hire SDRs with experience. We do pretty often, but generally I hire right out of college athletics background. And then network here. And we actually, side note, we actually work with a company. All they do, they have partnerships with D1 college athletic programs, and they vet college athletes to place them into sales roles and customer service roles, different roles like that too. That's been killer for us. Okay, and then the network here. Do they have a network or not? One thing I'll mention about having a network, I would encourage you not to expect, because they have a Rolodex, whatever that is, that all of a sudden you're going to get deals from that Rolodex. It almost never works out that way. The size of their network is helpful because they might know people who work at different companies. They can get introductions, things like that. They speak the language of the buyer. Like, that's another important signal. But I would never hire someone because I think that they could sell my solution to their current book of business. It rarely works out that way. In some industries, that's more common. So maybe if you're in an industry where that is what happens, then it would make sense. But for the vast majority of people that I work with, where they sell, software or service into an industry where you're not doing a lot of hiring and book of business and stuff like that, like financial advisors, this is somewhat common. The network isn't all that important, but it's sometimes necessary in order to get introductions and to work an actual sales process. Okay, so that's the skills and attributes. And as you're interviewing the candidates here, you're scoring them on, do they match our skills fit? Do they match the motivation we're looking for, the adaptability, the experience, the network? How aligned are they? So you can actually score them as they go. So one thing I'm going to mention here about SDRs before we move on, I'll come back here though, so I can get ready to transition. And for those of you who have joined a little bit later, so I'm going to answer all of the questions after I go through the content, which are probably about 10 more minutes here. Then we'll do Q&A for the rest. So keep asking your questions now, and then I scroll to the top of the chat and I'll answer all of the questions. But I want to talk a little bit about SDRs here. Like I mentioned, I hire SDRs right out of college. We're about to walk through the structured interview process, and I have a different track for SDRs that I will be showing you. SDRs are a unique one. I find, depending on what your process looks like there, I find the best is when I hire an SDR that doesn't have experience doing the job, because then they need to unlearn the bad habits that they gained at the previous organization. The vast majority of SDR functions are run horribly. They're run horribly, and they teach really bad habits. And it can be really difficult when you hire an SDR who maybe has a year of experience. They had mediocre performance, and they have all these opinions about doing the job because they've done it for a full year. And then they come to your organization and they try to do it their way, and things break down. Now, if you're a really established company, you have a very structured process, you can get away with that. The earlier on you are, the more challenging that can be. So just something to keep out for. I've hired a lot of SDRs, and by far, like I said, by far my favorite, hiring SDRs without experience. All right, let's talk about the structured interview process. Then we're going to get into some of the questions I like to ask during the interview. All right. So the first thing is a revenue gets submitted. Now, if anyone's, and some of you are actively hiring, I think, Robbie, you said that you had 3 reps you're trying to hire, but I saw some people are actively hiring right now. If you post a job posting, you're getting infinite resumes, right? You can't look through all those. But what you can do is you can do an email screening test. And I've been doing this for years. What we do is the revenue gets submitted. We send them an email saying, thanks for the resume. To pop up on kind of top of my radar here, can you reply to this email and just change the subject line to your first and last name? It's a little bit of friction. They have to go in, they have to go change the subject line. And if they do that, then I review their resume. This alone cuts out 50% of the people that apply, just so you know. Now we review the resume of the people who do it, and then we see, are they a potential fit, and schedule a phone screening. We send them an email with a phone screening. I have all the copy and like templates for all of these things too that I'll give you at the end as well. We schedule that phone screening. We conduct the phone screening, and then we ask, are we moving on? The answer is yes. We send them a written exercise, and you can do whatever written exercise that you want. What I typically do is I say, hey, find 3 potential customers that fit within our ICP and write a couple sentences about why you think they are a good fit for our product or service. It's super easy doing with AI. It's like the easiest thing ever. And I don't mind if they use AI to do it, by the way. It is so easy. It gives them a bit of a task. And if they do it, you're going to move on with them. And you also get to see, how do they write things? How are they thinking about it? They don't know much about what you do just from your website and stuff. Are they right? Are they way off? It's not super common that we disqualify at this step. It's more about seeing, does the candidate care enough to do the task, as well as are they thinking about what we do in a decent way? Even if they're wrong, like I want to know that, I want to understand their logic and why they picked that out. Okay, the next is based on what position they are interviewing for. Are they an AE or an SDR? For AEs, we send a mock presentation scheduling email. And by the way, we tell them this is our process on the phone screen. I do mock presentation, so mock sales demo or sales call. I do that before like a formal interview. And the reason why is I want to see how this person sells. You can do this as a panel and throw a handful of people on there. You can just have one person on there. You want to see how they sell something that they know. I never have a sales rep do a mock presentation or mock sales demo for my solution, or do a discovery call for my solution. I never do that. They don't know our solution very well. That's a lot to ask. But what are you selling right now? Sell me that. You should at least be able to do that. And that gives you a sense of their sales skills before you start getting to them as a person. So at least you know that they passed the skills bar. I don't do that for SDRs. And this is a bit controversial. I've had this opinion for a really long time. I don't find doing mock cold calls all that useful, so I don't do them. I've done a lot of mock cold calls in my career, and I've also hired people who didn't do great at their mock cold call, and they did really well as SDRs. I'm really confident in my ability to train SDRs, so that's part of it for sure, no doubt about that. But also training somebody to navigate cold calls well isn't very challenging, and them doing it in an interview setting, like, isn't all that helpful for me to be able to understand if they can follow instructions and read off a script. So I just don't do it. You can if you want. I just don't find it all that valuable. So after this, we send them the main interview. So we're going to go right to interview with an SDR. Oh, also, like, how good can your mock cold call be when, like, you've never done cold calling before? You just graduated college. Remember, I hire like more junior people. Okay, we conduct our main interview. We have a evaluation framework that we like called Spark. I didn't walk through it today because it's really detailed and like not super useful unless like I spent a ton of time teaching it. So I didn't go through it. Any framework works. What is it? Top grading's another one. Any sort of scoring, you can even just use the ideal candidate profiler scoring in replacement of this too. If everything goes well across all the interviews and we're excited to hire them, we ask for references. We do conduct reference checks. I'm a big fan of doing that. I frame those reference checks as, hey, we're going to hire this person. I want to get your take on what is the best environment for them to be the most successful. And occasionally we have disqualified people at reference checks, but they're going to give you people that give you good things anyway. Then you make an offer, you might negotiate, you hire, then you onboard the person. So that's what the process looks like. All right. Let's talk about interview questions. Here's what I'm going to say about interview questions. There's a lot of good interview questions. And what I'm going to give you, these aren't like the magic interview questions. One of them is. That's one I'm going to share at the end. It's my favorite one. But if you Google best interview questions for AEs or SDRs, you could basically copy and paste all of those. They're all fine. You'll find a couple that you like asking a lot. All I recommend is pick some that you like asking and then use those every single time. I run my interviews very conversationally, and I actually want the rep asking me a lot more questions than I'm asking them. So I have a short list that I like. Here are some that I come back to pretty often, but this last one that I'm going to show you, I use every single time, and it's really, really good. Okay, the first thing is, how much time do you spend cultivating customer relationships versus hunting for new clients? What's the philosophy behind that the breakdown? You're going to see other questions like this too. I like understanding if the rep has a process for doing what they do. I want more process-oriented thinkers because I'm a process guy. I implement processes. I want to follow a sales process. I want that process to be repeatable. And because of that, I ask a lot of questions around process and how the rep does something and the logic behind why they do it that way, because it helps me understand what type of thinker they are. This would be more appropriate if they're both managing a book of customers as well as getting new customers themselves. What do you think our company / sales organization could do better? And this would be based on all of the interviews that they had. This would be more of a later stage question that I would ask. I want to see if they have perspective and they have opinion. Next, I have, tell me something interesting you have learned recently. This is probably my favorite question. I like people who are interested in things. I find them more interesting. And I also get a little bit of a taste of what they're into. So like for example, I have like an unreal amount of interests. I like history a lot. I like philosophy, both Eastern and Western. I'm very into like strategic card games and stuff, especially when I was younger. I have a lot of little interests, right? I do photography. I love talking about those things, and I get really nerdy when I talk about it. That's exciting for me as an interviewer to hear someone else get all nerdy about something that they enjoy, something interesting that they learned. I want people that are interesting, they're curious. That's a really important trait for both SDRs and AEs. Next, we have you ever had a losing streak? How did you turn it around? Explain the steps you take from beginning of the sales process to the end. This is one of those questions I mentioned earlier where we're really diving in and trying to figure out, are you a process thinker? Do you follow a process? How do you think about that? Now, next, we are going to go over my favorite question to ask. And this is a question I created myself. It requires you to be the final step in the interview to be able to ask it. I'm going to read it to you and I'm going to explain why I like it so much. You have spoken with person A and person B. I'm curious, from your perspective, what do you think they will be most excited about with you as a candidate? And what do you think their biggest concern will be? This is the first question I ask on my interview with them. And here's why it works so well. What this forces that person to do is reflect on the conversations that they have had previously and think through, what do I think they think is great about me as a candidate, and what do I think they might be concerned about with me as a candidate? And what I look for is, I look for a person who pauses. It's a hard question to answer, right? So I want them to reflect. They pause. Sometimes they'll even go like, sorry, let me just think. I go, take your time, as much time as you need. It's a hard question. And they'll think through it and they'll go, okay, well, here's what I think they'd be excited about. I have experience. I have all this, right? If they answer real quick immediately, that's not a great sign for me, just to be clear, especially when that answer is also pretty like dry and surface level. So I want them taking some time to reflect. What else sometimes happens is they'll only answer half the question. So they might only say what they're excited about. They're only going to say what they their concerns might be. So that's another thing I'll notice. And then if they skip one of them, I'll remind them to do it. It's not something I would disqualify out, but I just find it interesting how sometimes they'll skip one of them. And then the other thing that is really fun about doing this is the person will walk you through the concerns and then give you an overcome. Like they'll say like, yeah, I think the concern could be that I've not sold into this industry before, but I can tell you, like, every time I've joined another company, I've been selling into a new industry. I learn incredibly quickly, blah, blah, blah. They'll start overcoming that objection. I love this question. It tells me how how self-aware the person is, and it also tells me how thoughtful they are, how they think through things, and how they handle answering difficult questions in the moment. So this is by far my favorite question. All right. So why does this work? Well, the first thing is it removes the feelings from the process. You are scoring based on an ideal candidate profile, and it helps remove some of the feelings that might sway you one way or the other. The other thing, too, is that candidates can't really hide their weaknesses. When you have a structured interview process, you have clear ideal candidate profile criteria in place, and you are evaluating across multiple different people. It's hard for them to really hide something that they're weak on. And probably the most important thing is you get multiple opinions by having multiple people interview them, by having a kind of a North Star candidate that you're looking at. You get multiple opinions around this person, how they stack up to your ideal customer profile, which works really well. Okay, so we're going to transition to Q&A. I have a video for you to watch first because I need to go get some water. So I'm going to play that video for you. We're going to jump into Q&A right after that. It's only 3 minutes. And then we are going, I'm going to scroll to the top of the chat and answer all the questions. If you have a question you'd like to ask, type it in now during the video. So that way I can come in and just start kind of blasting away the answers. A founder trying to build a repeatable sales process without decades of sales experience, watch and listen carefully. Because what I'm about to show you will stop you from wasting years of trial and error and instead give you a proven sales process designed by experts and fine-tuned in real time by our proprietary AI. In fact, we've used this process to help over 80 B2B SaaS and service companies add more than 133 million in revenue by bringing the sales expertise they didn't have and compressing years of trial and error into a predictable growth framework. Like Robert Ewan, founder of Monograph, who we've helped build their first sales team, raise 2 rounds of capital, and 3x the revenue all in 11 months. Or Matt Prados, founder of ReviewWave, who we helped grow, optimize, and scale their sales team to get back on track with 200% yearly growth goals. And the best part is, you get this consistent growth without wasting years on trial and error, piecing together random tactics, or trying to play sales expert yourself. Here's the thing. Most founders try to solve this problem in one of 2 ways. They either try to figure it out themselves, burning years on trial and error, or they hire and hope. Hire a sales rep and hope that they magically build the process for them. Neither works. Without real sales expertise, doing it yourself takes years you don't have. And without a proven system, that new hire is set up to fail. Our approach is different. We design your team and sales process together, create the playbooks they need, coach them in real time, and use our proprietary AI to analyze every sales call and metric. Then we work with you to turn those insights into improvements. What this really means is that when you work with us, you're no longer guessing. You gain a dedicated go-to-market team who builds the systems with you and makes sure it actually works. In fact, I guarantee it. We'll come in and build a completely tailored sales roadmap that details exactly what needs to happen, when it needs to happen, and we implement it into your business. And if you're not 1000% convinced that this document is the holy grail of your growth goals, we'll tear up the agreement and part ways as friends. Why would we do that? Simple. We only work with people we are certain we can help. Like David Gause from Bureau of Small Projects, who had a 266% revenue increase in 10 months by focusing on how deals were being managed and using that data to optimize the sales process. Or Chris Greco from StoreWise, who we helped lock in the best quarter in company history while working together. So if you're hearing this and thinking, these guys have the sales experience I'm missing, they've done this for other founders just like me, and they actually guarantee I'll get a clear, repeatable system, then the next step is simple. Beneath this video is a button to schedule a free Accelerate call. It's where we'll sit down, take a look at your business, results, systems, team, and everything in between. Next, we'll explore if and how we can help accelerate your sales and what that looks like. So click the button and you'll get a couple of quick questions to make sure we're in the right place. And on step number 2, you'll be directed to a calendar to schedule a time that works. All righty, let's dive in here. I'm going to go, I want to see if any questions came in. I'm not sure if they did. I posted the link. If you guys would like to book a call with me, you're more than welcome to. We don't work with a lot of people, and we have ways to work with you no matter what stage that you're at. So that link is there if you'd like to book that and just see what it might look like. Let's see. I don't know if I saw. Oh yeah, I thought this was interesting. Angela posted this, which is that she has 5 reps looking for 1 or 2 more, but they have to be a rock star. That's the problem. People somehow trick me during the interview, and they end up not being what they sold me. And this is the biggest challenge that I see with hiring sales reps. Sales reps are really good at selling themselves. They're very good at selling themselves. And that makes it difficult to evaluate them fairly because they're charming and they kind of trick you that they're better than they are. But here's the thing is it's not always that the sales rep misrepresented their skill set. They have a skill set that is based on the experience that they had previously through their career. And sometimes they just worked at companies where there were different variables that allowed them to be successful that don't exist at yours. So the classic example, there's a ton of different ways this could play out, but the classic example is you hire somebody who worked at a larger organization. They were really successful at that organization, and now they come to yours and they completely fail. I know sales reps. I actually know I know 4 different sales reps who have earned what was it like? I won't give the exact numbers, but I know 4 different sales reps who have earned in 1 year over $1 million in just commission, not including their salary. Even if you include the salary, it would be crazy, but just in commission. And I've seen one of those reps go to a different company and end up getting fired for performance issues. Was it because all of a sudden she's not a good sales rep? No, she's a killer. Just the environment was so different. She wasn't quite used to that, and she couldn't adapt quick enough. She was used to how she had done things before. That's a big variable here that you have to consider. And that's why I like interviewing in the real structured way. And that's why I have a lot of weight put on the ideal candidate profiler, because then I have a reference point of what ideal looks like. And I can look at the sales rep in front of me, look at my ideal and go, maybe this doesn't match as well as it could have. All right, what else we got here? Feel free to make my comment a question. Oh yeah, I didn't need your permission. I just did it. Okay, with account managers, how important is it they are an exact fit to the profile? You sit down and create the profile. If you create a profile of the ideal sales rep, you want the account manager, or excuse me, if you create a profile of the ideal account manager, you want the account manager you hire to match the ideal profile. Now, you might start interviewing folks and go, maybe my profile isn't quite right. You might make changes to it, but we're always battling. And everyone on this call probably knows this already, but you're always battling the need to hire somebody. Gosh, I need somebody in seat, with how long can I wait to get the right person? So some people over optimize in this direction. I'll give you an example of this in a minute, where they're like, oh, I just want as many options as possible so I can pick the best possible one. But then the best sales rep comes as the first candidate, which is uncommon, but does happen. And they're like, ooh, it's too early. I haven't evaluated enough people, even though I'm really excited about this candidate. They match my ideal candidate profile. Other people are way in the other direction, where they're like, I'll hire freaking anybody. I'll just fire them later, right? So there's because you need somebody in seat. There's a spectrum there. I'll give a quick story here. We were working with a client, I believe a year ago, roughly, and we were hiring a. Let me just get the facts right here. We were hiring a upper mid-market sales rep who have sold around 6-figure contracts. We had all this criteria. One of the things that we do is we will interview every candidate multiple times, and then we give that candidate to the client of ours. Now, we're not a recruiting firm, just to be clear, but we are involved in the interviewing process because we have to work with the sales reps that get hired, and we're working to build out the process and stuff. So we like to make sure they're not weirdos. That's like, I have a no weirdo policy. So we do a lot of interviews, and then because we have experience on the sales side, we vet all of the sales stuff, and then we hand it over to our client to do the final interviews. And because of that, we end up weeding out a lot of their early candidates. So anyway, we get to this point with this client where there were 3 candidates and he really liked 2 of them, but felt like he needed to talk to 10 people before making a decision and refused to refused to hire any of the 3 candidates that we had already vetted. And the problem was, especially one of those candidates was a rock star. He ended up not making a decision, not hiring anybody because those people all got jobs and they were out of there. So you got to figure out the balance here. So this is a bit of a long-winded answer to your question. Yes, sometimes you are going to hire somebody that doesn't match perfectly to our ideal candidate profile, but I would encourage you to work to construct an ideal candidate profile that you can really stick to, and feel free to give yourself a little wiggle room there, but I wouldn't deviate too far from it. I guess unless you really just need a button seat and then hire the person, I guess. Okay, what else we got here? Actually, real quick, I'm going to repost this link to book the call if you'd like to. I'm also going to share another link here, which is a survey. So I do these live classes every 2 weeks. One thing that's useful is getting your feedback on what you felt about the live class. If you like the content, also what some other topics you'd like to see me cover, that's incredibly helpful. We are also in 2 weeks doing another live class that's more AI driven. If you go to voris.com/events, oh geez, I can't type anything right now. So it says it's a month away. I'm reorganizing our event schedule right now. So if you look in 2 live classes from now at voris.com/events, you'll see one. It's called How I Generated 6 Million Views on LinkedIn using AI or something like that. I'm actually going behind the scenes. It's actually a very different class than I normally do. I'm going behind the scenes and I'm sharing with you my AI augmented content creation process. That's killer. And I've not done this before, but I'm going to walk through step by step exactly how I use AI to generate all of my content. So that'd be really cool. Okay, cool. Let me go back to the questions here. We're in a hunter environment. Boots on the ground is best. I need this hunter. What's the role title I'm detailing? I mean, you're going to call him probably an account executive like you would for any other role, but it's more about the responsibilities. You really need somebody who does a lot of outbound, who's comfortable doing outbound. You say boots on the ground is best. I'm assuming that means more like field sales, a lot of in-person stuff. You absolutely need to hire somebody with a lot of experience in doing that. So that's going to be all written all over the job description. These are the things that you're going to be responsible for. I expect you going to X amount of locations, meeting with X amount of people, doing in-person meetings, sourcing your own leads, that kind of thing. How long, generally speaking, is your SDR or AE hiring process? Of course, there will be scheduling conflicts, but in general. So we wanted to go quick. What I tell people is when you start hiring for an SDR or AE, expect 30 to 45 days before you're like really locked in on a candidate. Sometimes it happens way quicker than that, but it's a good general guideline. Like I told you guys earlier, if you want an introduction, I can introduce anybody to them. But we work with a company that hires a lot of student athletes. They do all roles too. So they hire people who are already in their career and stuff. But like one of their shticks is they hire student athletes. That goes a lot quicker. If anybody wants the introduction, just shoot your email in here and I'll connect you to Kelly. Okay. Just to clarify, you believe that being coachable trumps experience? No, I don't. I think being coachable is mandatory, but for account executives, experience is really important to me until you get to a size where you have such a strong process that you know that as long as the person follows the process, they're going to do pretty well. Even if they're not hitting their number, like if they're terrible, follow the process, they get 80% of quota, like that's fine. I do heavily value experience, especially early on. If I remember right, Angela, you said that you have 5 sales reps. So now you might be getting to the place where you can take a couple flyers where you're like, hey, I'm going to hire somebody who doesn't quite have the experience, but man, they're super coachable, they're engaged, they have great attitude. You can make those types of hires. I would feel comfortable doing that. But no, I generally care more about experience. For SDRs though, sorry, that was AEs. For SDRs, I hire with no experience. I don't want experience. I just want coachable people who are young, hungry, ready to kind of kick off into their career. That's good. Thank you. Yeah. Person. Okay. Yeah. Field sales. So yeah. Manja says in-person field sales, someone who can drive around and knock on doors. It's a very handshake environment. Then that's all you're hiring. So they do this in like medical device sales, right? They expect their reps to go to a whole bunch of hospitals or doctor's offices, stuff like that. Hire somebody with that background. Ideally, somebody who has sold a similar product or service. I find the more experience they have, the less they will follow the process. Yeah, so this actually is a really good point. You're talking about experience as a salesperson. I'm talking about what I was saying before is more experience in the industry or selling to the buyer. Of course, those kind of come hand in hand. But the point I really want to make here is when you have somebody who has experience selling to the people that you sell to, into the industry that you sell to, it shortcuts a lot of things because they already speak the language of the buyer and they understand how those buyers buy. But you are right. When you hire somebody with a lot of experience, they typically have a way that they like to sell. And if you have a structured process that you want them to follow, it might be a little bit more rigid than they are used to and that they even like. So what I try to do is be very open to with more experienced sales reps about how detailed the process is and make sure that they're comfortable following that process with the expectation that if you're hitting your number, you can do whatever you want. And that's something I do believe in. I give autonomy to sales reps based on their performance. So if I have a sales rep who's hitting their number and they're not quite following the process, they're doing things a little bit differently, there's two things that are happening. One, I'm definitely not getting on their case for not following the process right. Now, they need to still update CRM and stuff, but I mean, if they're not doing things exactly the same way as everyone else, I'm a little less worried about it. But the second thing that I'm doing is trying to figure out what are they doing that's working and how can I bake that into my process. So it's a bit of a dance here. A process that's structured enough that someone can follow it and hit their number. But I also want it to be flexible enough to give the reps some level of autonomy so they can sell the way that they're most comfortable. So it's a bit of a balance. I don't build sales teams where it's like every word they say is scripted, but I know people who do, and it works really well for them. You just hire a different type of salesperson in that environment than the former. So it's a bit of a balance. I don't have like a hard and fast rule that I use because every situation is a bit different, but I do try to think about where does this rep fit? Are they going to be able to follow our process that we have proven out to work? And then once they are actually hitting their number, I'm a little less worried about them adhering to our process as long as they're still updating the CRM and that kind of stuff. Okay, Robbie, what core traits differentiate top performing AMs and SDRs in a SaaS environment? So account managers, I mean, it really depends on the scope for the account manager. If you're talking about this is post-sale and they're in charge of upsells, cross-sells, and expansion, or that is expansion, and renewals, then you're looking for people who can really cultivate relationships. You're probably doing quarterly business reviews. They can run those quarterly business reviews really well. They have fun personalities. People like to be around, but they're also really sharp and they have good executive presence and they have good business acumen. Those are kind of the traits that I look for in that type of role because they're really cultivating those customer relationships. And then they're responsible for being able to expand the spend of that customer. For SDRs, it's really like coachability, work ethic, curiosity is a big one for me. The ability to do the same thing over and over again, that's an important skill. Those are like the main ones that come to mind. I agree. The issue is when they aren't performing and won't follow my advice, but they swear they are coachable during the interview. Yeah. So this is going to go back to what I was saying earlier. Hiring is guessing, firing is knowing. If I have a rep, I'll just be very clear about this. If I have a sales rep who is not hitting their number and they won't follow my process, they won't be at my company anymore. And that's it. You're not hitting your number. We're a performance-based role. You keep your job based on your performance. Now, if you're following our process, I'm going to pour as much as I can into you and coach you and work with you to help you get there. Absolutely. That's my responsibility as your leader. But if you're not taking that feedback, you're not open to following a different process or doing things in a different way than how you're currently doing it that isn't working, then you just don't belong here. And I'll be quick to fire. Like, for example, I just had a client. I was talking to her on Monday. She hired a sales rep with a lot of experience. She 100% did the right thing here. She hired a sales rep with a lot of experience. That sales rep got to their second week on the job and started asking for more money, saying like, hey, I want more money on this like specific type of deal. And she said, yeah, I'm totally open to renegotiating part of your comp plan, but why don't we get through a sales cycle first, close a couple of deals, and then we could talk about, hey, for this one edge case, increasing the amount you get paid out there. And the sales rep said, listen, if we don't increase that now, I'm going to quit, which is also wild. This is a wild way to handle it. And she said, well, this isn't going to work out. That was 2 weeks, maybe 2.5 weeks into the job. Now, my client was like, I feel like I just wasted a whole bunch of time with this person. My response was, it was 2 weeks, not 2 months. You need to act swiftly with these kind of things. And if you early on get signals that this isn't going to be the right fit, end it. All right. Amen. Preach. Good. So let's see what else we got here. How do you see how fun Q&A is? Gosh, my favorite part of the whole thing. How do you identify candidates who will positively affect the team culture, not just hit numbers? It really comes down more to personality and also your current team culture. Robbie, I'd be curious to learn, are you guys all remote or are you in person? The leader somewhat matters here too. So I am somebody who is incredibly good. If there's one superpower I have with team leadership or management, it's I can take people who are very different personalities and I kind of get them all to get along together really well. It's been a skill of mine for a long time. Part of it is I did stand-up comedy in the Bay Area for 5 years when I was younger. I've been around a lot of people with different backgrounds. Humor is a great bridge for all of this. So I have a lot of the skill set that I need to be able to do that really well. So you have to understand the current dynamics of your team, and you have a hybrid work environment. Based on what you just told me, so you have a hybrid work environment. You want to make sure that these are people whose personalities will get along with the other personalities that you still have in place. So one of the interview questions that I talked about here is around their interests. What's something interesting that you've learned recently? What kind of activities do you like? These types of things will also help you understand how close that they are. Another thing you can do is have one of your sales reps interview the person as well as a culture fit interview. That's something that I do quite a bit too, especially because you have 7 sales reps. I absolutely, have one of them interview a different person. It doesn't have to be the same person every time, but I think that's really good. Do you agree with cutting the bottom 10% of the sales team regularly as a way to increase overall productivity? Yeah, that's like boiler room stuff. If you have 5 sales reps, what are you going to cut 20% every quarter? Like you're going to fire one of those people and hire a new one. I do this strictly based on performance. Now you could argue like, oh, at scale, I have 50 sales reps. I want to cut, every quarter, I'm going to cut 5 sales. Fine. Maybe. It just depends on what you mean by bottom performer. If you have people that are genuinely far away from their quota and not performing well, I'm firing them, but I'm not holding myself to 10%. I'll fire 50% of the team. Like that, the performance is what guides my hiring and my firing. So no, I don't. In fact, I don't know, hot take. I've not said this out loud before. I actually kind of think that's really lazy. Oh, I'm just going to fire the bottom 10% of performers every quarter. Like what you're doing is you're creating an environment where you're hiring a lot of people and you're putting the burden of performance on the people, not the process. It's lazy. And it works for some people. I don't know how long, like the longevity of those type of sales environments are. I've been in those sales environments before as a rep. There's generally really high turnover. But if the bottom 10% of performers are hitting 90% of their quota, they're pretty close to their quota. Are you going to fire them? I don't know. I think those people can improve to the 10%. But if you want to just put all of the burden on performance on the sales rep and just say like, hey, we're just going to fire the bottom performers, I just feel like it's an easy way out as opposed to really investing in people who have a lot of potential and need a little extra support to get to their quota. But if you're talking about, hey, I have someone who's performing really low, then I'm firing those people regardless. So there you go. I don't know. Take that for what it is. Good question, though. I like that question. Okay, I work for a company that has forward-thinking ownership, but we have a very dated hiring process that is not well structured and has yielded subpar hires. How would you recommend pitching a new process such as yours to supplement the more legacy process they currently have in place? So what I would actually do here, actually, let me say this in a different way. Whenever you have a part of a process, so hiring sales reps, for example, whenever you have a process that is very structured, but not giving you the output that you like, I'm first looking at that process and trying to determine what part of it is resulting in me not getting the output that I'm looking for. That is the most critical component of this to me, because odds are you don't need to rip and replace the entire hiring process. What you actually need to do is figure out where in the hiring process you need to make a change, either delete something or add something in order to improve the output and hire and get more quality people hired. So that's what I would encourage you to do. You just watch me go through my entire process that I like to follow for hiring reps. Now go look at the companies. You don't need to convince them to change their entire hiring process, but go look at how you guys currently do it and say, you know what? I just don't feel like we're getting as clear as our ideal candidate of what our ideal candidate looks like. I don't think we're getting as clear as we could be. And now let's focus on getting even more clear and also making sure that everyone who's part of the interview process is aligned and evaluating every candidate based on that ideal candidate profile. That's a way better approach than trying to tell everybody like, hey, I hate what we're doing. Let's do it completely differently. That might be a tough sell, especially when some of the people that that you're going to be saying this to are the ones who built the legacy hiring process in the first place. In your view, what is the role of an account manager and SDR? High level, what do they do? Okay, so there's a lot of different definitions for these things. I'm going to tell you my definition, but it doesn't mean it's the right one. An account manager, this is a post-sale role is how I consider it. That means the sale has happened. The account manager now takes over. They're sometimes responsible for onboarding. Other times you split that role and you have customer success. But a lot of times they're getting handed the new client from the sales team. They're responsible for onboarding that person, working with that person or that company, that new customer, and they're maintaining a relationship. They're probably doing quarterly business reviews. They're meeting with them as often as they can. They're looking at usage metrics, make sure they're using the solution if it's a software product. Those are the types of activities that they're doing. And they're also responsible for expansion and renewals. So they're working with those people, identifying challenges they might be having that you can also solve by expanding the service or product offering that you have, those types of things. SDRs are reaching out to prospects and booking meetings. That's it. So that might be cold outbound. They're cold calling people, trying to book meetings. They might be reaching out to inbound leads that come through from your marketing efforts and reaching out to those folks, trying to book appointments for the sales reps. And there's a clear handoff there. That's how I define those two. How do you avoid possible complacency in sales individuals? Yes, this is a good question. Side really quickly here. I'm going to repost for anybody who's there just listening. I'm going to repost the schedule link here. If you'd like to have a conversation, if you're a good fit for us to work together, here's your link to do that. Okay, so how do you avoid possible complacency in sales individuals? Well, complacency in what way? So I've seen situations where, for example, they'll get residual commissions on deals that they close, and then they get such a large book of business that you just don't focus on new business at all because they're making a lot of commission based on deals that they closed last year, for example. So sometimes a comp plan is where I'll look to try to reduce complacency, whether it's structured like that or maybe they're just not making enough money on certain deals or whatever. So I mostly look at that. But generally, complacency comes where their quota is set at a level where they feel like no matter what they do, they can't hit it. So they're just going to kind of go through the motions and do the best that they can. So generally, I'm looking for something that's more systemic versus, oh, this person is just like lazy. But dude, I'll be honest, sometimes like salespeople just get sad and you got to pep them up. You got to talk to them, see what they're going through. When I was an SDR, I used to book meeting. I would try to book all my meetings for this one sales rep who closed 80% of the deals that I sent him. He was a monster and he went on vacation. And the other sales rep that I was supposed to book for more like equally. I was stuck only booking for them. And they closed 20%. So it was a massive swing. So when he came back, I was like, hey, this is going to be awesome. I'm going to go back to actually getting deals closed here. And that's how I was compensated when I was SDR, which I don't like, by the way, but that's just how it was. I got compensated on a deal closing. I have to jump pretty soon. So I'm just going to answer a few more questions, like one more or two. And then I got to jump. But okay. So I went up to him. Well, thank God you're back. I just booked you a whole bunch of meetings. He's like, all right, cool. Thank you. He's a little bit bummed out, but whatever. He's not closing anything, which is weird. I'm like, you're like the best closer here. What's going on? Finally, I got the courage to ask him because it had been like 8 meetings. He had closed anything. And he goes, I'm sorry, man. I went to Vegas. I lost 30 grand. I'm just pretty bummed out about it. So it happens, right? And if you, as a leader, like you should know that. All right. Last one here is from Brett. Scenario. You're brought in as a new sales manager to turn around the underperforming sales team's performance. I love this question. To avoid mutiny, how long would you take to allow for team trust building / bonding with implementing significant new policies, like a new compensation plan rollout? All right, Brett, I love this question. I learned how to do this from a friend of mine who is very high up at a food distribution company. He's one of the regional presidents, and his reputation at that food distribution company is because he was one of the few people who would be willing to do this. And he was definitely one of the few people who could do this. They would move them all around the country to wherever they had a failing distribution center for distributing food to restaurants. And he would go in and he would turn it around. And he just did this his whole career. He was the turnaround guy. He was so good at it. He taught me this. You go in, you're brand new, and you say, all right, here's where our performance is. This is not where we want it to be, right? Of course not. I'm here. And my only objective is to get the performance from where it is right now to this really great number. And the benefit of doing this is you all make a lot more money. Does everybody here just want to get the performance up? Yes, we do. Okay, awesome. I don't know why your performance is down. I just got here. First mission, figure out why. So what I want to do is have a conversation with all of you individually about why you think the performance is where it is. And you go and you talk to every sales rep one-on-one, and you just list out all the things that they feel could be better. Oh, we need this type of material. We need that. We need this here. We need that. Get all their complaints out on paper. Then you go through, prioritize which ones need to be fixed. Give them the list and say, hey, do we all agree that from a priority perspective, that these are the things that we need to work on and we need to improve? That'll help us improve our performance. They go, yes, this is great. And then this next one can be a little controversial. You actually do it. Go and fix all those things. Go and fix the little thing. Oh, you need an asset. You need a case study for whatever. Go work with marketing and get that done. When the team sees that you follow through on what you say you're going to do and you listen to what they tell you, you'll gain all of the trust. You gain it through your actions. So that's exactly what I'd recommend to do. All righty. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. There's a lot you can do on a Thursday. You're spending with me. Take a look at some of the live classes we have coming up. And if you have any questions, never hesitate to reach out. We'll talk soon. Bye.